Reverend Leo, thank you so much for sitting down with me this morning.
Well, thank you also, Danna. You continue to be an inspiration to me and, folks on our team. And, we spend a lot of time and travel talking about the intersectionality of things. And if we don't care for an environment and the forests, we don't have to worry about other differences because we won't be here. As the climate impacts increase, we have to come up with real solutions. It has to be done in a just way. So we look at our forests, and that's where our oxygen comes from. That's where our cooling comes from. When we get more and more episodes of extreme heat, that's how we purify our water. Just so many benefits. Our forests are just being decimated, and we are blessed to have a lot of forests in the South, nowhere near what we should have or what we once had. But it's really important that we maintain our forests at this critical time. Southern forests are often described as the wood basket of the world. We are the world's largest provider of wood products. And if we're just going to look at extraction and exploitation, those are like the two legs of injustice, and particularly in communities where we're seeing a lot of the logging and a lot of the wood product industry. They're in those communities that are predominantly Black, people of color, low wealth, the people who've been exploited and been the targets of injustice from the very birth of this nation.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've really learned from you is that we can't really separate these issues of the economic conditions of these communities, the health impacts that these communities are facing, the climate impacts of increased flooding and the disproportionate way that hits communities of color and low-income communities, and the logging.
From Dogwood, we learned so much. And one of the things is the intersectionality between the forest and logging and the exploited wood product industry and rural communities. When you're in a rural community, you have very few assets. They're primarily natural resources. So what happens with the water, what happens with the forest, what happens with logging, particularly since you don't have small-scale farming going on anymore. This is one of the reasons why these communities are impoverished, because they don't have engines of community economic development that benefits the community, but instead we have a few people, landowners, commercial companies who are stripping these communities of their assets, and they're the only ones that are benefiting from it economically and otherwise. And so we learned that from Dogwood. And let's keep our assets in place, like our forest, while we also develop other means of creating assets and wealth in these communities, and doing it by leaving our forest standing.
Those rural communities, the economics are not really demonstrating that the wood products industry is having positive impact in these communities.
Communities know the problems that they face. They know the solutions. They just don't have the resources to implement those solutions. And that is done purposely. It's done by design. So when you look at the history of this country, and when we talk about institutionalized racism, from slavery to the days of segregation to this current time, if you are going to practice institutional racism, if you want to have power and control, then the first thing you have to do is make sure that the people that you are using have no assets. And that's what happened during slavery. And so we're seeing now more widespread flooding. We're seeing increasing floodplains. We're seeing all of these things happening. So when we went down to Britain's Neck And for example, people told us the flooding is worse because within a mile of the PD River, where people know that the flooding begins, we still see logging taking place right along the wetlands and the rivers. People told us that, hey, when we were kids, we were able to play in the PD River and we never went out beyond a certain spot because the water was too deep. And now that same location, people can wade across there because the river at that point needs to be dredged. I mean, it's as if they just pull out these blueprints and say, let's exploit people, let's extract the cotton, we'll ship it all over to Europe where they'll be able to take the cotton, put it in textile mills, make clothing. We'll make all the money off of it as we continue to strip people and communities of assets.
What role do you see Dogwood Alliance playing right now in this broader movement for climate justice, Leo?
One of the things that Dogwood has done has been they've been able to help people in these communities get assets and get resources, what the people need. And now, they have been able to educate people.
We've learned as much from the communities that we have been working with as and maybe more than they have learned from us. And so it really is that kind of authentic partnership that makes this type of movement work.
No matter how much you talk to people, it takes a really long time for people to reach this level of consciousness where you get this collective epiphany and people are like, wow, that's a problem. We need to deal with it. And that's what we want to get to. We want to get to that point, but it takes a long time to do that. And people actually learn quicker when they see you implement solutions and they see how those solutions benefit communities and families, and then people who are in those same situations want to replicate solutions that work. Dogwood has been so influential and instrumental in helping us to put actual projects on the ground. We often say in our movement that the change begins with me. And just looking at how Dogwood's board and staff has evolved, how the work has changed. I've seen Dogwood change so that we care about forest standing, but we also care about foresters communities. And I'm sure you'll agree that that's been evolution, that's been the change. And we can't have change unless we change ourselves. Dogwood has sharpened us, and we believe we've sharpened you. And because we're sharpened, let's cut a brand new path for humanity on this planet. Okay.
I love that. I love that. All right, Leo, thank you so much, and have a great day.
Okay, you too, Danna.